Heck.
Here.
Trustee Rassich. Trustee Wajowski.
Here.
Trustee Benucci. Here. Mayor Count.
Here. You rise for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're seeking a motion to approve the minutes of the joint meeting of the President and the Board of Trustees and Plan Commission and the minutes of the executive session held on January 11th.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Thank you. That motion carries. Presidential comments?
Have none this evening.
Trustees' comments?
I have a couple of comments, I guess. It's recently come to my attention, at least, I guess, that there's a traffic issue in the morning over on 248th Avenue, just north of 127th Street or Plainfield North. My understanding is, I think that there's been a number of warnings, I guess, for people driving around, vehicles pulling into the parking lot, crossing into the center lane. And I think the chief of the department's been good about kind of issuing warnings to people, but it seems to be like maybe that period is ending now. So I guess I just wanted to kind of notify, let people understand, and maybe get confirmation from the police department that they're going to start enforcing that better. There's no, talking with the chief, I don't think there's any good alternatives, short-term alternatives to solving the issues. So unfortunately, they're going to have to start enforcing the laws. And so I guess what I would ask is, maybe you can make a mention of it, or if you're taking that route, you might want to consider alternative routes, because it's not going to get any better anytime soon. Because unfortunately now, if you're stuck and you try to go around, you might get sick. Is that correct?
Yes, that's absolutely correct. Talking to the chief and along with Sergeant Eric Munson, he's well aware of the issue. He's got a couple of his traffic officers concentrating on that particular area and upping the enforcement for that in which can be cited. As Trustee O'Rourke mentioned, by all means, we would just ask the residents that normally travel that route to consider alternative routes to allow for the ease in and ease out of those students, families dropping off, picking up their students there at the high school.
Thank you. And the other comment I just wanted to make, I didn't know if everybody's aware, but again, I believe the state, from a license plate renewal perspective, has stopped sending reminders. And I know a couple of people that I'm aware of didn't understand that, didn't realize that their plates had been expired. So anybody in the audience or people listening might want to go out and check their vehicles and make sure that their plates have not expired. Or if they are going to expire, you're not going to get a reminder notice in the mail. So you need to go on the state's website and renew it through the internet. Is that correct as well?
Yes, I do believe that the state of Illinois also set up an email alert system in which you can actually register your email to get the alerts via email. So again, I would strongly recommend that you take the time to go onto their website and do that. And not only that, mention it to your friends, your families. And as the trustee mentioned, take a look at your own car. Because shockingly enough, there's several out there. And unbeknown to several people that the state had stopped that service.
Are there any other trustee comments? Now, this will be the time for public comments. There are no public comments, so we'll proceed with the workshop meeting. First item on the agenda is Plainfield Library District proposed expansion.
Thank you very much. Tonight we have some members of the Plainfield Township Public Library Board of Directors and staff. Is the township name still in there?
Nope.
Okay. I was getting a
Consolidated.
I thought, oh gosh, there might be townships over there. To speak to the upcoming proposed tax levy question and library expansion project. As you know, we normally don't wade into the waters of other taxing jurisdictions to let them instead speak to the community directly. However, we invited in the library folks today, mostly because, well, we're the only group that has this broadcast over cable access television, and we have our YouTube channel. We thought it was a good community service to provide to the residents. So with that, I'll turn it over to Carl and Julie.
Thank you so much. Good evening. My name is Carl Gilmore, and I am the president of the Plainfield Public Library District Board of Trustees. Tonight I'm here with Director Julie Milivec, as well as Eric Penny, our representative of Nagel Hartray Architecture, and we will be presenting to you this evening just some general information about the expansion plans for the library district and the process that we have gone through to reach the decisions that we have. Before I start that, I do want to remind everyone of a couple of things, namely the mission of the library, which is to educate, captivate, and connect, as well as our mission, our vision statement in service of that mission, which is that the Plainfield Public Library District provides excellent library services to satisfy the educational, informational, entertainment, and inspirational needs of community residents throughout their lives. The library is a community center where residents connect with resources, with each other, and with their community identity. The library leverages technology and human capital to give residents access to services and resources not only at the library's physical location, but also throughout the community in partnership with other organizations and via virtual services. The library is a vibrant and visible presence in the community, making residents aware of 21st century library services and our library's unique character. And we really have used that vision statement to guide the process that we have undergone in trying to make sure that we are fulfilling that commitment to our community and our district. This process has been going on for quite some time. Eric is going to go through a detailed explanation of the specific process that we used to arrive at the plan that we have presented, for which you can see a 3D model here, and which has resulted in the 2 referenda questions that will be placed before the public on the ballot in March. What I would like to do is to give a little bit of background as to the longer-term process that we have undergone in terms of making sure that we are meeting the needs of the library district. Back as far as 1991, which was shortly after our 1990 expansion, the library board quickly deduced that the expansion to 27,000 square feet from the original 1940 2,700 square foot building was already going to be woefully short of future projections, as we realized that within 10 years we had met a 20-year projection for the population of the library district. And this was consistent with other areas of the local community, both public and private, which saw similar rapid expansion and have also grown to serve their particular constituencies, including the village, the police and fire protection districts, the park district, and the school district. So to accommodate these anticipated changes, the library reviewed its place in the community and its supports and is supported by, and we expanded our service offerings in terms of programs within the library, outreach efforts, access to advances in technology, and strategic partnerships with many local bodies, while being careful to also increase the variety and availability of materials for our patrons. These changes were included as part of a 2006 to 2010 long-range plan. The conclusion of that plan included the possibility of a physical expansion of the library facilities, which had been held until later in that period, recognizing that we had a 20-year bond from the 1990 expansion to pay off before we wanted to issue new bonds. So in 2009, the first attempt to meet those needs, a referendum, was placed on the ballot in an attempt to grow through an addition to the existing library building, as well as a new branch location. Unfortunately, the economic downturn that affected so many across the country, but especially in rapidly growing areas like ours, resulted in the defeat of that referendum. Needing to continue planning for the future, the board shifted to a more agile strategic plan model rather than another long-range plan, reflecting the need to define overall goals that would eventually result in the still necessary expansion of physical facilities while providing guidance for continued operation in the meantime. We continued to seek community input for development of that strategic plan, knowing that patron involvement in the evaluation and expansion process would be central to good planning and the ultimate success of any growth project. A ballot measure was considered for 2012, but based on community member sentiment indicating that they did not support expansion at the time, the board decided not to go to referendum at that time. Additionally, in 2012, the Board of Trustees worked with KJWW Engineering to evaluate the building and infrastructure needs of the library in the immediate term, from 3 to 5 years out, and in the long term. More than $1.2 million in necessary work was identified just to keep the current building in operable condition. Our special reserve fund, the library's capital fund, was used to undertake the immediate term project, which includes replacement of the HVAC and control systems, windows, and a shingled portion of the roof. A long-range budget plan was developed and approved in 2013 to ensure that the library would be financially able to make the necessary repairs and replacements as identified in the 2012 building evaluation. The plan included reorganization of staff to meet those financial needs by setting aside $95,000 per year over the next 4 years for the necessary work on the building. Much of this work has been done, but more remains beyond the funding already set aside. In 2014, as the immediate and medium-term infrastructure work was being completed, the board recognized that additional work would still need to begin affecting major areas of the building's overall operations and structure. At the same time, growth in population began again in earnest, and a general economic optimism started to be felt. Rather than committing to long-range work that would be indicative of staying in the current facility for the foreseeable future, and recognizing that that space was unsuitable for continuing to house growing programs and a 21st century library, the library contracted with Anders Dahlgren to update his 2008 work on a space needs analysis of the library. Realizing that the new projections continued to speak to additional space required beyond the current facility, we began to explore, with the help of owner's representative Graham Harwood of CCS International, the possibilities for expanding the library within the district. We then hired Nagel Hartray Architecture in March of 2015 to begin the preliminary design and budgetary processes to be able to come to the public with an expansion plan and referenda possibilities for the March 2016 ballot. That process is laid out on this projected slide. In addition to our regular monthly board meetings, we held several special public meetings and gathered a citizens task force to help guide us and the staff in developing a plan that would meet the district's immediate needs as well as into the future for a 21st century library. There were 22 meetings in all, as well as a commissioned phone poll, which provided the input we needed to plan as well as guidance for what the tolerance of the community would be for the funding of that building project. These meetings culminated in our December 2015 decision to place 2 referenda questions on the March 2016 ballot: a $39 million 20-year building bond and a limiting rate tax increase to fund its operation. It has always been a stated goal of this board to present a plan that would reflect the community's needs and preferences so that it would be successful. To that end, we will continue to solicit their assistance in finalizing the design of the building once the referenda are approved. And Eric Penny, our architect, will now present the details of that plan and how it will be executed if the referenda do pass.
Good evening. You're going to have to bear with me here. I'm going to attempt to summarize in a short period of time what we talked about for 22 meetings, almost a year. So there was a lot in there. We're going to leave out a few things along the way, but I'm going to try and give you an overall flavor of the whole thing. Next slide, please. We started with site selection, and we really were looking at two sites when we first started. The existing library site and the site located out on Van Dyke Road, which is where the metro station, long-time planned metro station that isn't going forward, was planned to be located. As part of studying those sites, we did some physical test fits to see what we could fit on the sites with the program that was developed at the time, based on the 90,000 square feet and the amount of parking we would need to go along with that. We met with the public committee, open public meeting, and the task force, both separately about this. And we went through all this and had a wide-ranging discussion. Really, there was a great deal of consensus that the existing library site was the ideal site for the library. That it's socially and emotionally the heart of the community. It supports the traffic to it, supports the business district. The business district also supports it. And it's in a central, unbiased location in the village. The Greenfield site was just seen as too remote with too many neighboring uses that weren't really beneficial to the library, including the train, the light industrial sites, and a lack of general pedestrian access. So when we took a vote, we'd like to say unanimous, I hate to say that, but no one voted for the Greenfield site. We got continual feedback that the existing library site was the route to go. Looking at the existing site, we looked at it 5 ways to start with. The first way on the far right is a renovation. And that's expanding the existing library. And that's what we did is we looked at expanding it due north, extending the bays of the library. It makes the most sense because of the way the bays are laid out to continue the collection in that direction. And then we also looked at 4 schemes for new construction on the site. And those schemes were based around the idea that we had to keep the existing library functioning while we went through construction. So they're located on the portions of the site where the library isn't. One of the real limitations of the site is the library is really stuck up into that southwest corner of the site, very close to the lot line, very close to the church next door. It really limits your options for expansion. Another limiting factor in the development of the site is water reclamation requirements. No longer can we just do what we want on sites, we have to store the rainwater that comes down on them. And what we're intending in all these schemes is to store that underneath the parking lot. It's kind of a gravel retention basin that holds water from heavy rainstorms until it can go more slowly into the stormwater system. And we use a civil engineer to kind of roughly size that. And pretty much all the parking area is going to be storm retention or other utilities. Looking at the addition, there's a real couple planning limitations there that come on. When we put the building, expand the building further north to fit a 90,000 square foot program, it really filled up the whole frontage of Illinois Street. It's going to be a long building along there, and essentially in some ways it creates a wall between the parking and the downtown. And one of the things we've come to appreciate, the more we've been out here, the longer we've worked on the project, is how much that parking is shared with the downtown. I've never been out here where I didn't see someone who was going to dinner as well as going to the library using that parking. And one of our big concerns about that particular scheme is that this parking, right now for most libraries, you walk a long ways to get to the front door. That's usually a complaint. You do the same to get to downtown. If we add it on that side, it's an even longer walk, and I think one we wouldn't expect people to make. We'd expect a lot of people to come down the alley between, severe angle here, between the church and the older building next to it, and that alley would become a quasi-public thoroughfare for pedestrians. We don't think that's a great idea. The other thing is we looked at that renovation site, we just cannot get 90,000 square feet of building on the site and adequate parking. You're going to have less parking than you have now with a bigger building on the site. Looking at the new construction, we looked at it several ways, with a building along 59, a building that tries to take more of an L shape along 59, and a building across the north, and a kind of a variation of those in between. And one of the things we quickly realized is that, again, with a 90,000 square foot building, we were going to have to park underneath it to get the parking counts we needed. That requires a ramp that gets down in underneath the building, requires different access to the site. It kind of complicates the site matters, but we just didn't have enough site left to get the counts up. As we were developing and discussing these schemes with the public and the task force, again, you end up with a building when we situate along 59, where the entrance should really face the parking lot. And you kind of have the back of the building. The entrance is kind of hidden from Route 59. One of the things we thought we should really improve upon this time around is to have the entrance more visible from more areas of the site, especially with the larger library. That kind of affected these two center schemes. It also kind of really limits the access in the visibility from Route 59. It's the major road through there. You really end up with just driveways at each end and very little room for landscaping left in the site. So we started looking at the two options that stretch the building across the north end of the site. We quickly realized, and I think the public meeting really emphasized this, that how nice it was to have the library face downtown, be able to have a full vision of the front from 59 and from Illinois Street. It was kind of something that wasn't necessarily intentional at the first, but really became a benefit to the whole scheme. As we went through again, we took a vote from everyone, and it was pretty much unanimous again that concepts 2 and 5 were the preferred schemes. They provided easy vehicular access from 59 and Illinois Street. It faced downtown. The parking is located near the building entrance, which is improvement over the existing, but it's also situated where it's easier to use from downtown. One of the things that was a concern is when we're looking at 90,000 square feet, how's that going to fit into that area? It's a big building. That was a challenge. So when we took a vote, concepts 2 and 5 were chosen by the public and the task force and supported by the library, but we also recommended that we further explore adding on to the existing building. We didn't feel like we'd gone into enough depth for that, and that we really owed it to the community to kind of take a deeper look at that option. Next, please. So we then went back and tested the site in more depth in a couple ways. 3 schemes as a renovation, and then 3 schemes as new construction. We started with the scheme with the renovation of 90,000 square feet with the idea we were going to magically find more room for parking on this site and to make this better. It didn't take long studying this to realize we just can't fit a building of that size on the site and meet the parking needs of the library and the downtown area. You really end up with a big building that gives you very poor access to Illinois Street. We needed to find a way to get 2-way traffic across. Drop up and pick up of book return systems and things needs to happen on the driver's side of the car, where it's best off of 1-lane, 1-direction roads. So there's some real challenges that were in there. The other thing, as we discussed this with the library, is right now you've got a building that's half into the ground. And it's really not a good idea to put an addition on there that's offset from the existing building, because libraries are generally staffed per floor. If you offset it from the existing building, you end up with 5 floor plates that you're staffing instead of 3 floor plates that you're staffing. That doesn't break very well down in the way typically libraries are organized, and it creates an operational complication. It's not as flexible. It's also not as cost-effective to operate that way. So we decided to take a step back further and look harder at the program size and the existing building as to what else we could do to that. Looking at the existing building, as we dug into it deeper, there's some inherent issues with the building. I think one of them that was built in 1989 just happened to be not the best time to build new buildings, because it was right before the American Disabilities Act came out with accessibility issues coming to the forefront, right before major changes in life safety codes, and also right before technology began to be implemented in public buildings. You know, the internet was a rumor kind of at this point in time. If you put 2 computers in, it was considered very progressive. And now, you know, 2 computers doesn't serve anybody at the library. And those kind of limitations kind of have a long-term effect on the operation of the library. There are also some other inherent issues with it. There was a lot of effort made to fit it around that existing original library, but half that original library was underground. So half of this building is underground. The only portion, this is the lower plan here, that gets good daylight is right in the center, and that was achieved by pulling the earth back away from the building at that point. Well, if you try and do that for a larger area, you're going to start sacrificing site area and parking and so forth. You're going to end up with kind of a moat along the face of that building to really get light usable space. Libraries are different now than they were in 1989. We don't just expect people to come in and check out a book. We expect them to spend hours there. Daylight is something that's become essential towards that kind of functioning of the library. We also have various issues. The way you enter the building is not very efficient. You enter into a very small floor plate in front of everything. You're immediately confronted by the stairs. Now, while the elevator satisfies the technical needs of the American Disabilities Act. It doesn't really solve the intent in which everyone comes into the building the same way. The other issue with that is you can take that elevator down to the lower level, which is over here. That's down a hallway and away from the main desk. So it's kind of an unsupervised area to a certain extent. It's not something we would ever recommend in a library to have that much space that's kind of out of your direct sight line all the time. You've not had issues that I know of with that, but it's not necessarily good planning practice. Another issue is the number of stairs that are put in. These stairs are put in a way that we're not allowed to do anymore. 4 of the 5 stairs come down outside. We're not allowed to do that anymore. We have to enclose those stairs. We have to keep snow and ice off of them. We have to provide area of rescue assistance for people with wheelchairs with them. It just is slightly before the time when that was a code requirement. It's also not a good idea to have 5 ways to get out of a building that size. It's very hard to control security in those type of situations. Just more doors you have to manage. Another issue, and one we can solve, is the main stair. It's a big hole in the middle of the building. It kind of gets in the way of your entrance flow when you come in the building. It projects noise. It's a very inefficient way. It kind of makes the building difficult to use. It makes it so the collection is really broken and divided into 2 on each floor. That could be filled in. Things that can't be addressed as easily are things like the mechanical system. The codes have completely changed. Those need to be redone. The same thing with a lot of the electrical systems. The fact is, when we're adding on to such a great deal to this building, you have to bring the existing building up to the current code. Also, we can't add on in a way where the library has to go and make major upgrades because we're going to be spending the library's available money. So what we build needs to last. We're looking at 20 to 50 years, not a 10-year solution for any part of this. So that means renovating the building is going to be more expensive than just a simple approach. The other thing that we can't really address is these orange dots are the column grid. We don't know quite why, but you'll notice there's a lot of columns in the center of the building. It's very unusual. I think as an architect, I'll blame it on the architects. And we practiced a little architecture with the structure there. It was a time when we put a lot of columns in buildings and expressed them stylistically, and the problem with that is it makes it very inefficient for a library. There isn't a base spacing that's 30 feet on center in the direction we would normally have a standard base spacing in the building. It means it's very inefficient for laying out books and so forth. More importantly, it's inefficient for laying out the things that libraries use today. They need more space and flexibility. All the columns in the way really cut into that ability to rearrange the building. Next slide, please. So having said that, we went back and looked at the existing building again, and we said, if we're going to add on to the building, we're going to have to reduce the square footage down to something that will fit better on this site. And we targeted 70 to 75,000 square feet. We had a suspicion that we could make that work, but we weren't positive at the time. But we tested to see how that would fit. So this scheme has gotten shorter. It allows us to get a drive on the far. On the far left is the first scheme I'll talk about. Lockport's across the bottom. The Illinois Street's up the side, and 59 is on this side. The addition coming off the north of the library now has gotten small enough we can get at least a drive-up book drop area off of it. We can get a service drive, an entrance drive out to Illinois Street. And it's a little bit easier to get around the end of the building to head towards downtown, but frankly not a lot. We still don't think it's a good idea to route pedestrians past book drops and service drives and so forth on their way to downtown. It's not ideal by any means, but it does get us up into a parking count that is close to what you have now, a substantial addition to the building. One of the problems with it is that when you take a building that's 24 to 27,000 square feet, you add on 51,000, you line the floors, we're still going to end up with 40% of the building underground. That's going to affect the usability of the space, the suitability of that space for the various library uses going forward. It also means that you're going to have a third floor of a fairly limited size. Again, not an ideal staffing or operational breakdown for a library. Something more equal breaks down better into the adult collection, the entrance floor with meeting rooms, and the children's floor. So it's an awkward arrangement. For that reason, we tested adding on to the east, north and east of the existing building, with a 3-story addition aligned with the existing building. You get a very rational layout to a parking lot area. Functionally, you get much better access from both streets, Illinois and Route 59. A lot of that stuff works out better. For a plan shape, that's not our favorite. You end up with a lot more interior space kind of when you start L-ing the buildings around, and it gets a little less flexible in how things lay out within the building, especially when you've got existing construction with a lot of columns placed into it. I think the other thing that concerns us is when we do that, we can get the building contiguous, then we start having to